Hello, welcome to the Sons and Brothers Google Hangout. This is Dr. Bob Ross, President and CEO of the California Endowment. I'm going to introduce this extraordinary and lovely person who's sitting next to me in a second. But thank you for coming to the Google Hangout and joining us and taking part in this interactive conversation. You are helping to support our young men of color throughout our nation. Joining me today are a number of extraordinary people, each of whom have made great strides and contributions in lifting up their community. And we're going to meet them in a minute. And before we get to them, a little bit about this Hangout. What we're trying to do is we want to get your input, young people. We want to get your input about what are the most important things that need to happen to support our young people across our nation. In this particular poll, you're going to see on your screen a poll asking that question. The results of this poll are not only going to inform our work at the California Endowment and the foundations that support Sons and Brothers and My Brother's Keeper kind of work. But these results are going to go directly to our president. President Barack Obama is going to receive the results of this poll, and the person who works for the White House next to me is going to be responsible for making sure that your input and your voice gets to our president. So your voice is important. Also, we have a direct Spanish language translation of this chat. It's available by clicking on the tab on the upper right of your screen. So, podemos hablar en español también. You can listen in as well. That's the extent of my Spanish that I'm going to try tonight. And below that is where the real fun happens. That's if you're logged in, you'll be able to chat with our other viewers and ask questions of our guests, and I'm going to introduce our guests in a second. But we're also going to select some questions and ask them a little bit later. If you're on Twitter, you can ask a question by tagging your post, hashtag Sons and Brothers. That's hashtag Sons and Brothers, and you can join in the fun. So joining us today are Heather Foster, Vilmer Valderrama, Romeo, the King of Bachata, Nicole Ari Parker, Boris Kojo, India Ari, and two of our outstanding youth leaders, Oscar Lara and Damian Valentine. Oscar Lara is from East LA. He completed his first year at college at UC Riverside. Congratulations on that, Oscar. He graduated from Garfield High School in East Los Angeles, and he's an active member of the Inner City Struggle Organization in that community. Damian is from Los Angeles, from South Central Los Angeles, he said proudly. He's an 11th grader at Manual Arts High School and an active member of the Community Coalition, and both of them are youth leaders with the Brothers, Sons, and Selves Coalition in Los Angeles. To my right is Heather Foster. And Heather Foster is with the White House, folks. She works for President Obama. She's a public engagement advisor with the White House in the Office of Public Engagement. She's an important player in the President's My Brother's Keeper initiative, and she's going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. We also have Romeo, the King of Bachata, a singer and record producer, and he's coming to us tonight directly from his concert. Thank you for that, Romeo, and he's revving up for a role in Fast and Furious 7. We also have Vilmer Valderrama, who is a writer, producer, director, actor, best known for his role as Fez on That 70s Show. And in 2013, Vilmer was honored with the National Council of La Raza Amo Award for outstanding social activism. We also have the husband and wife duo of Boris Kojo and Nicole Ari Parker. They're joining us today. I think they just literally got off a plane. I'm not sure where they're at, maybe at LAX. But Nicole Ari Parker is the actress from films like Boogie Nights and the TV series Soul Food. And she was presented by President Clinton with the Thurgood Marshall Lifetime Achievement Award, hosted by the NAACP. Boris Kojo, I'm told we look like twin brothers. He's an actor born in Austria and in Germany. Why were you laughing, Dana? And he's best known for his roles as Jason in the film Love and Basketball, one of my favorite films, and is also in the series Real Husbands of Hollywood. And we also have India Ari, the 4-time Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter and musician record producer. She supports Half the Sky, turning oppression into opportunity for women worldwide. So thanks, everybody, for joining us today. We're very excited for the conversation ahead, particularly our special guests. Let me hand it over to our youth leaders, Damian and Oscar. You all lead the discussion. Take it away, gentlemen.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. I'm happy to be a part of this conversation. Both of us are. So let's get this discussion started. Heather, we'd like to start with you. Can you share with our viewers tuning in a little bit about the White House initiative, My Brother's Keeper?
Well, hi. I'm so excited to be here tonight. Thank you all. And thank you, Dr. Ross, for that wonderful introduction. So yes, I'm here to give you an update about My Brother's Keeper. You know, we have been so excited by the way everyone has responded to this initiative that the president launched in late February. You know, we launched this after going to and speaking with so many different youths across the country and hearing about some of the needs for young men of color. So what the president did on the 27th of February is that he launched a task force. And that task force was commissioned over a period of 90 days to produce a report. And so this past Friday, the My Brother's Keeper task force released its initial 90-day report, which includes key indicators that will provide a comprehensive review of the environments and outcomes of boys and young men of color and their peers. So I'm going to talk very briefly about some of those recommendations just so that you can get an idea. So one thing that came out through the report was that entering school, students need to be ready to learn. So eliminating suspensions and expulsions in preschool and other early learning settings was one of those recommendations. Two, making sure that we are strengthening current policies to make sure that young people are ready to read at grade level by third grade. Four, completing post-secondary education or training. So a recommendation there was to increase college completion courses by expanding students' access to and making sure that they can complete these rigorous courses and take advanced placement classes. Another thing was making sure that graduating high school were ready for college and career opportunities. So one recommendation that the report made was to increase focus on transforming the schools and districts producing the majority of the country's dropouts. Another thing was making sure that students could enter the workforce properly. So one thing is making sure that we're increasing the awareness about youth and summer employment and the use of pre-apprenticeships as good entry-level jobs. And so, you know, we've seen just a tremendous amount of support and commitment. We've seen it from the private sector. On Friday, the president also announced that Magic Johnson, founder of Magic Johnson Enterprises, and Joe Esquivara, CEO of Deloitte, will lead an external private sector effort focused on boys and young men of color. One other thing that the president did this past Friday that I really want to share with everyone tonight is that what he did was call on Americans to really think about mentoring in a different way. And so we're asking people to sign up and pledge. I'll mention it before we're over tonight, but you can go to whitehouse.gov/mybrotherskeeper and sign a pledge to become a long-term mentor. We have found this key. This is one of the key recommendations out of the report, and so I look forward to hearing from everybody tonight about their thoughts on the report and also directly from you. What do you think that young men need across this country for support?
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Heather. That really helps to ground our conversation today. So tell us, what do you think is the most pressing issue facing young men of color in our country today?
So as I traveled the country the past couple of months, I went to cities like Detroit, Atlanta, Los Angeles, really hearing directly from youth. And a lot of them mentioned that they just wanted opportunities. It seems like for a lot of young men of color, there's just not enough after-school programs, not enough jobs, and not enough opportunities for them to achieve their dreams. And so the more that we can provide in their communities, the more activities, the more resources that are available for activities, it really seems that young men are just looking for ways to get on with either their current situation or ways to improve their current situation. So they wanted to take those after-school classes. They wanted to make sure that they were doing well in school. They didn't want to get kicked out or suspended. So more opportunities really seems to be a pressing issue for young men.
Thank you, Heather. Now our first guest is the King of Bachata, Romeo Santos. Thank you so much for making it the time to join us right now before our concert, Romeo.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm having a bit of difficulties hearing you guys, so I'm trying to have everyone here be extremely quiet, but I'm still having a bit of a difficulty hearing your questions and conversations. Do you hear me fine?
Yeah, I can hear you
Yes.
fine.
Okay.
I will speak slowly so you can understand the question, okay?
You may have to speak up.
Speak up and I'll speak slowly as well. This question comes from our brother Marco Hanna from Fresno, California. Romeo, you've teamed up in bilingual collaborations with the hip-hop community, including Lil Wayne, Drake, and Nicki Minaj. You've seen the power of the hip-hop community and the Latin music worlds coming together. How can this motivate young people to partner up across the country to improve their communities?
Well, there's a real important, famous phrase in Latins. En la unión está la fuerza, which is in unity, union is the force, and when we all come together, it is always going to be a win-win situation. I've utilized my music, to just unir esas fuerzas. O sea, I've used different nationalities, African Americans, people from Spain, like just el género en sí ha tenido mucho crecimiento. There's been a lot of growth in my career, starting from Aventura and as a solo artist because of that. So realmente I feel like es un pacto, un elemento muy importante to be able to just join forces, and siempre va a ser una unión y algo muy importante el poder unir así.
Thank you, Romeo. You bring up really important points about our communities being stronger when we are united. And I just personally want to say thanks again, and I also want you to have a great show too.
Thank you.
Also joining us today is our next guest, Valderrama, who has been a strong advocate for immigration reform. Vilmer, as someone who has been born in the U.S., left as a young child, and returned as a teen, can you share some of the challenges you faced, and what kinds of advice or encouragement can you offer to youth who were brought to the U.S.?
Well, the first, can you guys hear me okay, by the way?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great.
How you guys doing? First of all, so excited to be part of this this chat. I really commend this every group and everyone that's joined here as we continue to conversate on how we all move together as a multicultural country. And I tell you, one of the things that I will tell you when I first came to the United States was first it was the language barrier. That was a big one for me, and we understood as a humble family, that first things we needed to do was to learn how to speak the language. And I was very grateful that school had ESL programs, because the ESL programs really allowed me to understand the English initiative. For me, learning how to speak English was the first tool for me to take on the world as I wanted to and enjoy the American dream. I think that some of the other obstacles was that at that time, it wasn't necessarily hip to be a minority. At that time, we were still very much very underrepresented in entertainment, very underrepresented in advertising, and most importantly, we were this kind of silent commerce that they do not speak of. Back then, every billboard didn't reflect on what our neighborhoods looked like. Every TV show didn't actually reflect on who we were as a nation yet. There was this old dinosaur producers and directors and all the different networks producing things that they thought for some reason were the were the face of America. But at that time, little did we know that some of these minorities, from the African Americans to the Latin community and even Asian Americans, they were quickly becoming not just the engine as they have been, but they were becoming the next face of what the United States looks like as an American flag.
Thank you very much, Vilmer, for highlighting those very important issues. Being the son of immigrants myself, I understand the same kind of issues that you've dealt with and that your parents may have dealt with being in the United States.
Sure.
With that, I'm going to pass it off to Damien.
Thank you, Oscar. It was touching a compelling story, and I just want to introduce India. for being here and for you having a wonderful song, Brother's Keeper.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the inspiration for the song?
Yes. Um, First of all, hi everyone. Thank you for having me. We are having tornado watches, so if you see me flinch, it's because it's lightning.
Wow.
But I'm happy to be here. Brother's Keeper. The inspiration is so I come from a spiritual and creative perspective because I'm a songwriter and an artist and a visual artist and a writer. And something that I know we don't do enough inside of our popular music is uplift men. And so when I was making this album, this album I just released, Songversation, is really about my spiritual ideals and putting them all into music, all to song and lyric. And so when I was working on this album, my co-writer had this concept of my brother's keeper. And on a spiritual level, I wanted to say those words to men and to young men and to hopefully just inspire someone with that song. And people who know my music know that I completely and totally adore Stevie Wonder, not just his music, but him. And he called after I released Songversation and said that Brother's Keeper was his favorite song because it's powerful to hear a woman say, I accept you even when you're not perfect. And so really that's the inspiration behind it, just wanting to say something to the men in our world, just a note of appreciation and more than that, but acceptance. Because no one's perfect, but we all try to be. But to say that I love you and respect you and honor you even though you're not perfect is a really special thing to say to anyone. But, especially from a woman to a man. I think Stevie Wonder I think he's right about everything, but I think he was right about that.
Thank you for sharing that very powerful story. I mean, Stevie Wonder is it's an inspiration for myself as well. I mean, I do appreciate his music. I think Damien has a question for Romeo.
Okay. Thank you again, India. So beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, for Romeo, growing up, we all face challenges. Can you tell us how you stayed positive? Who or what made a difference in your life?
I would have to say my parents. I come from a humble family, and they taught me the most important elements to make it in any profession, which is first discipline, dedication, perseverance, and respect others so they can deliver the same respect. I grew up in a really tough neighborhood. I was exposed to a lot of negativity, but I was also raised in a great family that just at a young age I was able to choose the right path because my brother, my sister, just noticing how they were able to achieve their dreams because of my parents. I knew at a young age I wanted to be an artist, and even though I did a lot of things, meaning like I would play sports, I would I had different hobbies, but the music was definitely something that I knew I wanted to do, and it wasn't a pasatiempo, how we say in the Latin community, which is just like something you're just gonna adapt to for a few months and then let go, and yeah, that was just basically the few most important elements that I apply, and even now at the status I'm in, I still feel like discipline, perseverance, and respect is very important to maintain at the status and make sure that you keep growing, not only as a professional but as a person, to just get people to really accept your music and respect you as a person, as a professional.
Thank you, Romeo. I love your music, and I really think that you're the king of bachata. I love the song Odio, by the way. It's great. I just want to say thanks everyone for your thoughtful responses. Dr. Ross will take over and take some questions from the audience.
Absolutely. The first quick question. I think this is a very quick answer, but for India Ari, you don't mind President Obama using the title of your song for his national initiative, do you?
I would like to think he got it from me in my dreams. But what I really love is that the synchronicity. It's beautiful how things happen.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
So we have a question in from Twitter, from Speech Therapy, and Speech Therapy asks, and this question is for anyone? So anyone can jump in. And the question is, do you think that the technological divide has played a major role in why our young people are not thriving? So anyone can jump in and take that question. Maybe Vilma?
Sure. Sure. It's interesting. I really, like, everyone has a different definition and has a different perspective on what technology has done to society today. Some people may say that they have made relationships more disposable. They have made more relationships between family members and love relationships at the same time made them even more impersonal. But the fact of the matter is that thanks to technology today, we have access to a level of information that many of our generations just never had. So I think the idea is to how do we inspire young people to use these tools to further their education, and I think that's where we are going wrong. I think that's where a lot of the school unified district, which as reliable as they have been, for many years, I think at some point they need to adapt and they need to evolve. They need to really evolve about how can we utilize technology? How can we actually update ourselves and speak the language that these young students that come to school are speaking to one another? And I think that, to me, is where we need to focus on. I mean, look, needless to say, there's a very unfortunate percentage of young kids, from African Americans to Latinos, that rarely graduate high school. Are they distracted because of technology? I don't know. I mean, are they unfortunately they think they're smarter than schools? Who never knows. I think that at the end of the day, I think that what we need to have is a different type of conversation with young people and say, hey, listen, now that you have access to the information you need, how about we use those tools for furthermore your education? And I think that if we can inspire them to do that and actually speak to Unified School District to say, hey, let's figure out a way that we can adapt this conversation, that we can create a different language as we speak to young people and inspire them to understand that we understand how, that we understand, how they commute and how they talk to one another, and hopefully utilize those tools for their education. I think that that's where we're going to get further along. But I believe, technology is used for however you are raised, that's how you're using technology. It's like everything else. The access you have to anything in life, that's how you're going to basically use it. But I think technology can be used for good and not meaningless or disposable, entertainment.
Yeah, I love your answer, because we're asking young people to be accountable and responsible for their education, but we're also holding education in public schools accountable to engaging young people in technology might be the path to do it. This next question, I'm going to ask if Romeo is still with us before his concert. This is from Francisco Gallardo. And his question is, how do we build an intergenerational movement of healing our sons and brothers?
Can you raise the volume? I really cannot hear you guys.
Okay. I'll repeat the question, but if you can't hear, someone else can answer. The question was, how do we build an intergenerational movement to help our young sons and brothers heal across the nation?
Yo no entiendo.
Maybe if you put some headphones on, maybe. You have some headphones?
Okay. While you're trying that, let's go to India with that question. India, what are your thoughts on how we build bridges between generations for movement building
I'm sitting
and
here
purpose
thinking
about young men?
I'm thinking about that as Romeo is trying to find headphones. I think that's a hard question. Intergenerational.
I think if you don't mind, if I can jump in on that question, the question is how, to be completely honest, it's difficult to say because it's really what motivates us to actually create a solution. Number one, right? So number one, we have to first start with like how do we motivate them to figure it out? Because it's not what we're gonna do for this generation, or it's what we're gonna do for these young people. It's how they're going to figure out to not only communicate with one another, but to better their own future. So I don't know, for me right now is to identify, those age groups, those demographics, those kids who want to be community leaders, who actually want to make a difference in their own schools, and then create a dialogue that they actually can truly digest. I think that to me is where it starts. It starts where empowering them to change their own future. Because at that point we can preach all we want, we can tell them how to do it, we can give them the tools, but at the end of the day is that they have to have a fire inside of them to change. So, how do we create a multi-layer, multicultural, multi-diverse initiative? It's by inviting everyone to the party. That's really as simple as that. I think a lot of people don't realize that minorities for so many decades have never felt invited to the party. And when they finally got invited to an election, when they finally were spoken the vocabulary, the language, and they were spoken in the terms that they understood, you saw the record numbers that showed up to every election because finally people were invited to a different conversation. I think that to me is the beginning. Is how do we inspire them to create a conversation with one another where it actually creates a real community change. I think it starts with the communities and it moves to the states, and then all of a sudden the United States talk to one another about what kind of change we are doing from within. And I think it's empowering them to start the conversation. I think that's how you create them. Invite them all to one party, and then make sure the barbecue is good enough for them to come back.
This is also a really good opportunity to talk about mentoring. I mean, that's why we're doing this huge call to action to ask people to mentor. That's a great connection. We're looking at different generations, mentees, the mentors. You can be older, you can be younger. I mean, that's one of the recommendations is making sure that you adopt a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
I have
hey, folks. Oh, good. India, do you want to say something?
Yes. When I think about, so as a songwriter, the fundamental tenet I have chosen is to make music that is a social contribution and that will elevate and liberate the consciousness of the listener. And when I think about that party that Wilmer's talking about, when I think about the party, I think about what we're going to do at the party.
Mm-hmm.
And what stories we're going to tell, what place we're going to come from. And for me, when I think about young people, I always think about what it means to teach young people how to think higher, how to think more socially conscious, how to think more socially responsible, how to use their gifts. If you're a songwriter or a dancer or a performer or an actor or a writer, how you use your gifts for the good of all people, not just to get money in your pocket, but you could get paid too. But how do you make a contribution to society as you're doing these things? And so I think it's funny, I don't mean to make this all about Stevie Wonder, but he's on my mind today. When I think about the reason why I admire Stevie Wonder so much is because he put a message inside of the music, and he made you dance, and he made you think, and he touched your heart, and he touched your mind. And this is the kind of musician that I aspire to be. So when Wilmer talks about this party, I keep thinking about what are we going to eat? And how is the food going to really feed us? And what are we going to listen to? And how is the music going to really feed us while we're there? What are we going to tell them the dress code is? And what are we going to tell them, and how are you going to talk when, there's this intergenerational party? There's certain things you don't say around your elders, and there's certain things that elders need to say around young people. Like what we do at this party, for me, is the elevation and the liberation of consciousness. And I think that anybody in the public eye can, and of course I would say should, but I think you can use your vehicle right where you are to make choices that are going to be more elevating and liberating to your audience. I think it's the easy thing to do. It's just a choice. So, at the party, what are we going to eat? What are we going to wear? How are we going to talk? And, at this party.
Right. Right.
Well, I never thought about for the first time you got me thinking, folks, about barbecues and music as the ingredient for
All in
social
the sauce,
change.
Charles, it's all in the sauce.
Wait, what?
All in the sauce, Charles.
Let me just go back to Romeo for a second, if he's still there. Romeo, are you gone? Did we lose you? The concert may have started.
I think he's gone.
Okay, so let's go to. I understand we may have Boris Kojo and Nicole Ari Parker on the line. And if they are there, I'm going to throw it back to Oscar and Damien to see if you have any questions for Boris and Nicole. But let's see if they're on.
Yeah, I don't think they're here yet. Boris, are you here?
I don't see them down there.
Boris and Nicole, are you with us yet? Okay, then let's just go to the next question. And again, this one is either for Vilma or India. And this question is, how can we help Hollywood drive energy towards the positive rather than reinforcing the negative about our young men?
I've been trying to figure that out for a long time.
That's not an easy one.
No kidding.
All I know is that I choose, the artist needs to choose. You choose something socially responsible. I don't know how to make Hollywood do any different. Somehow, kind of way, we have to show that it's going to make money.
Yeah, that's exactly
to show a positive image of men, and then Hollywood follows the money. But maybe having people who are spiritually aware and socially conscious develop projects. That's the only way I've ever been able to figure that. I've been in the music industry as well. How do you figure that out?
Right. I think I also think a lot of it, and I have humbly speaking here, I have a studio, I have a production company, and I have a deal with Lionsgate, and I'm doing stuff with the Walt Disney Company and Fox and everybody, and I'm producing all these different things. And the common threads in there is that I think nobody's really paid attention to the actual audience that's out there that's probably in the market for that kind of content, right? Because nobody actually has ever tried to produce for them, right? Because they're afraid that if they don't follow the trend, if they don't follow what's hot today, they might not have a marketability with numbers, right? So I think that what's been really unique in my career and what I've seen in my profession as a producer as well is that sometimes you got to take a risk. And everyone's waiting in Hollywood and in the music industry, I mean, in every industry really, is waiting for who's going to be the first one to take the risk and who's going to be the first one to put the money where their mouth is, and who's the first one to invest in that group and invest in that minority or invest in that entertainer and that movie. Because when it works, all of a sudden, it's very cool to make feel-good movies. Yes. It's very cool to make inspiring music. So I think that what's interesting is and it's almost like really having someone like India and Romeo and maybe me and a few others, and creating a small coalition of people that are influencers and know how to speak to their audience, and then create some kind of small movement that says, hey, you know what we can do, guys? Let's try this time around. Because I have a feeling that there is such a market out there for feeling good stuff. I think people watch the news enough. People watch terrible, movies and television. I feel like today, if we were to give each other a shot at saying, hey, what about this? Let's be the first ones at trying it this way and see what happens. I think we'd be surprised how many people have been waiting to not watch what's trending today, whether it's the negative or the terrorist movies, or whether it's the action flicks and all that stuff. Which, by the way, I watch action movies too, but they have to be some kind of happy ending. You know what I mean? So I think that the truth is that I feel like Hollywood has to create the marketability. Unfortunately, most of Hollywood is a heat-seeking, a radar. That radar really identifies what's hot, and then they start producing towards that. And then that gets cool, and they see what's hot next, and they produce that. So it's going to take a few of us to create a coalition in a movement, and then hopefully, at that point, speaking to the audience and everyone that's watching here, they make a choice, and they make it known. by attending the movies, by buying the music, by watching the TV shows, and I think that to me is what's going to speak louder. But unfortunately, they're not speaking that language, and they're not inviting them to watch this kind of programming. I think that's going to be the first step. And look, India's music is doesn't get more inspiring than her music. I mean, it's beautiful, and obviously she's created her movement herself. And I think that's one artist that we have that's a pioneer of that, right? Someone that can truly inspire people through her voice and her music and her lyrics. Now it starts with them producing television series. I mean, I'm trying to do humbles on my part, but producing animation and multicultural programming and all that stuff. But to the core, there's not enough of us taking a chance. And I think that's what's going to take a few of us to actually really try to give it a shot and say, hey, man, let's try this and see there's a market for it. I think we'd be surprised.
Well, it's interesting because if I may, Damien and Oscar, I'm interested in you guys answering that question because you guys are the consumers. You and your friends and your colleagues and your fellow students in school, you guys buy the music, and are young men and young people ready to purchase and support positive messages and positive music that both Vilma and India are referring to?
Well, I know there's a bunch of negativity right now in the world, of course, the unfortunate massacre and all that stuff. I think that people, of course, do like feel-good music and all that stuff, so I think that, of course, me being the consumer, I would be interested in something like that. I think that, of course, it would be incredibly successful. I really see no reason why it shouldn't be. I don't know if you have anything.
Just basically piggybacking on what you were just talking about. I think that I'm ready to hear music of that nature, and also my friends too, because I know that we're just ready for the songs that just have the right message in it, because the alternatives are the ones that haven't led up to anything constructive. So we're just waiting for that change, and I think we're ready for it.
Are you ready to stop supporting music with the wrong message?
Yes.
Yeah, I actually have stopped
Yes.
myself a few years ago. Stopped listening to kind of the rap music that's demeaning to women and all that stuff. So I've already made that commitment a few years ago.
Damien and Marco, I have a question. What got you guys interested in this issue to begin with?
What got you involved in contributing to your community?
Well, ever since I was young, of course, like I mentioned earlier, I'm a son of two illegal undocumented parents. So I noticed very early on that the way my parents were treated was an injustice. So as I grew older, I felt like the undocumented kind of the problem with the lack of immigration reform isn't the only injustice that there is out there in the world, and I feel like that I should be fighting for other injustices as well. So I know that BSS Coalition and all these other kind of organizations that have been part of fight against injustices against boys and men of color, and pretty much injustices of basic human rights. So I'm here because I want to help against any injustice, like I said.
Damien, what motivated you to help your community?
Well, at a young age, around the beginning of high school, I was kind of cutting up in school, wasn't really on the right track, and actually Mayo Arts Youth Empower Through Action, which is a program with Community Coalition, actually they actually helped me turn that around, and basically help me see the light of just like being a better a student and an advocate for my school. And so I just, since I seen that they helped me make that change, I wanted to see that change into my peers and into my community. So I ended up being a full-time member of Community Coalition and the Brother Son Sales Coalition because I saw that they wanted to make a change, especially in the lives of young African American Latino men, and I actually wanted to be a part of that change because I just wanted to see something different. I wanted to see more of my peers graduate instead of being kicked out of school. So just having that in mind, it just gave me the will and the power to just keep going and want to make changes within my community and make changes all around.
Yeah, and by the way, I just want to say, and Heather from the White House, you'd be so pleased to hear there's been great work done to reform school discipline policies in the state of California to keep young men in school rather than suspending them and expelling them out of school. And Inner City Struggle and Community Coalition are two of the organizations where the young people rallied to provide leadership themselves. And we saw it going to city councils, going to school boards, going to Sacramento, and making sure that our elected officials are held accountable to keeping our young men in school. So I wanted to congratulate both of you for that. I have one more question from Stephanie, and I'll ask either Vilma or India to respond, but also I know this is important to the White House, which is how do we get more men in particular, but people to mentor other young men? What is it that we're not doing smart enough or creatively enough or passionately enough? How do we get more mentors out there for these young men who just want somebody who can be a guiding light? Any thoughts, either Vilma or
Okay.
India?
Well, it's interesting. And then I just turn off my screen by accident. Okay, there it is. It's interesting. I do a lot of speaking engagements in colleges and high schools, and I've been talking to a lot of youth leadership programs. And a lot of the youth leadership programs, some of the obstacles have been that most young men have not given permission to lead. They haven't been empowered to lead. They haven't had enough counseling or teachers and telling them that, hey, you know what, you might want to share that with your fellow students. You might want to tell your younger brother that, or there hasn't been that kind of conscious effort in trying to make young men take more charge and more of a leadership role. I think that there's lack of leadership spirit, in a lot of young groups out there. I think that they've been given an opportunity to lead, and I think that they have to be empowered to want to. I think that a lot of young kids are not. I feel like they're not empowered to. We're not even empowered. They don't have that essence of like, I feel like I'm a leader. They don't have this. They haven't really infused the spirit of that. And I think that the way to, the way to inspire them to take leadership is, and the way that I've been trying to do it humbly with some of the speeches that I've done, is by letting them understand the crisis that we live, but most importantly the stakes. Understanding that today, we critical and urgent matter. And that is that we need to change your neighborhood, we need to change your group of friends, we need to change your generation, because we're already the old ones. We're already old. I mean, we're already past this. The generation that we're trying to inspire is theirs and their own kids after that. And I think that half of it comes from really empowering them to understand that they have, one, the ability to, and two, that that it's up to them. I think that maybe if we inspire them a little bit, if we we kick their butt a little bit and say, hey guys, you know what, you're the ones who need to figure this out. They might take that role of leadership and eventually start mentoring their ones around them. I don't know. I mean, it's a complicated question because it's a motivation. We have to motivate young people to want to, and in order to want to do something, the stakes have to be high, and they have to understand how critical and how urgent the change really needs to be.
Hey, India, before I go to you, I just want to remind everyone about the poll question, which is so important. We do want to hear from you, and we do want to thank Boris and Nicole, Marie, for trying to get through. I guess they just couldn't get through. But you know what? It's interesting, India. Both you and Vilma, without being asked about this, invoked and mentioned the importance of the role of spirituality. And I just wonder, India, if you would talk a little bit about the importance of spirituality in this work, about trying to engage and connect people who maybe feel hopeless and maybe feel alone and maybe feel isolated. Can you talk a little bit about that?
This is always a bit of a fine line because I think inside of spirituality you discover those timeless truths. And just like Wilmer was just saying, the truth is that a big part of how you get people to mentor is reminding people that everyone is worthy, first of all, and that you have something to teach someone else. Everyone has something to teach someone else. It just depends on who you're talking to. There's always someone who has something to teach you. This is a fundamental spiritual truth. Like everyone is a teacher and everyone is a student. Like you hear that across all different religions. And I think that wisdom that's there, just outside of religion or outside of trying to tell someone what religion they should be or any of that, just looking at the timeless truths and applying them to your life. And like Wilmer was just saying again, what did Gandhi say? Be the change you wish to see in the world. And so if you have a pain, like then that's one of those fundamental spiritual truths, and you have something that you are in pain about, one of the most powerful ways to heal your own pain is to help someone through a pain similar to yours, because then you're talking to them and you're talking to you, or to help someone similar who has a pain similar to something that you went through when you were young, because then you're talking to your young self and to that young person, and that young person talks to another young person. I'm not saying anything that anybody doesn't know, but to answer your question, I think those fundamental, timeless spiritual truths have stood the test of time for a reason, because they're impactful and they know the truth. And why reinvent the wheel when the wisdom is already there? Right. It's just calling on it and choosing to speak it, and to walk it, and to be it, and to sing it, and act it, and write it, and dance it, and produce it. So that's why we all love Oprah so much, right? Because she put all of her power behind a message that is responsible and reminding people of the fundamental spiritual truths. But we all have access to that, and there's always somebody that is your student and that is your teacher. And I also think that spirituality teaches responsibility, that we're all interconnected, and that it's not about whether or not somebody has your same skin color. Like, this is one planet, and we are a humankind. Yeah. And there are people who are closer to your social circumstance, and to me, that's just culture and that's language. So who you can speak to is easier when they're closer to you. But the truth is that if you heal yourself, you heal the people around you, you're healing humanity. That's the truth. We want to reach that critical mass where it becomes passé to speak negative about young men, and it becomes passé to speak negative about young black men. Like, those things are just old news, but that starts with you, and you pass it on. And I also think that spirituality gives you that space to go to do the right thing, even when nobody's watching. You do it because you want to be right. That's right. Because you want to be right, because you want to be healthy, because you want to be a good person. That's outside of religion. But religion, you can find spirituality in religion as well, of course. Right. But that concept of just being good.
India, you just reminded me of something that I thought was really, really important. And actually, I had this conversation with somebody. It was ironically, this gentleman who came from Russia and came to America and was inspired to invest his own fortune in creating the conversation and trying to create a simple recipe for goodness and kindness, right? And it's called Unite for Good, and it's a Clinton Global Initiative, and it's a beautiful message, and I'm helping them spread that word. But something that I thought was really interesting is, and I feel like it starts, perhaps might be the first step, which is we have to learn to share again. I think that if we can learn to share again, if we can learn to share with one another again, you subliminally and somehow spiritually, you find yourself sharing wisdom. and ironically mentoring without directly and indirectly. And I think that that might be another way of thinking about inspiring young kids, is to teach him how rewarding it is to share. Because that, with sharing a meal, sharing a moment, sharing a smile, sharing a laugh, sharing a joke, sharing an anecdote, sharing a lesson, and I think that if you could really create, can you make sharing cool and fun and disarming, which means that it makes it easier for you to live, it makes it easier for you to be yourself. At that point, I feel like you become a mentor of kindness and goodness, and eventually now you have a more confident platform to be exactly the leader that you need to be, not only for your family but perhaps a community. I think that learning to share again might be one of the first steps, I think.
Well, I can't think of a better way to conclude our discussion this evening. These last comments, inspiring comments by India and Vilma. I just want to thank Heather. Anything else? I know the president would be proud of this conversation. And what do you want to say on behalf of the president to our audience and to our young people listening today?
Well, I just think, just on behalf of everyone at the White House, everyone that's a part of the My Brother's Keeper team, we just encourage you to continue these conversations. Really think about what is My Brother's Keeper in your own community. Just hearing directly tonight from these young men, it's incredible to hear about your passion for this issue, how you want to help others. And lastly, we talked about mentoring. I mean, I encourage everybody that watched this tonight to make sure that you think about being a mentor. Sign up. Even I, over the past couple of days, have thought, I have some mentees, and I've just thought to myself, sometimes I think, oh, in my busy schedule, can I really do this? But believe it or not, I mean, the time is well worth it. So I encourage everyone to sign up to be a mentor. Thank you all so much for being a part of this conversation. It's so important. And I look forward to telling everyone at the White House, including the president, about this conversation tonight.
Thank you for our extraordinary guests, Vilma and India in particular, but also Romeo, who's probably into his first song in the concert right now. And then, of course, big ups to Damien and Oscar. Thank you for your leadership as young men and showing the way for this nation, how we can reclaim our young men as the important capital this nation needs to be great again. So on behalf of everyone here, the California Endowment, and all of our sons and brothers, and the My Brother's Keeper Initiative, good night. Time for the NBA final game. Dr. Bob Ross, California Endowment, and make sure you send in that poll. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye, yeah, big fan. Love your work, sweetheart. You guys be good. Take it easy. God bless you guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Roma. India, be safe with those.